research and had millions of footnotes, and then I wrote this little book, and all of a sudden everybody wants to know what I have to say. So that's been kind of an exciting experience, working for commercial press and writing a book aimed at a more general sort of audience instead of just nobody paying attention to me. So I was going to read you two sections of the book, and then two fairly short sections, and then hopefully have some discussion, because I know everybody always has a lot of questions and a lot of opinions about immigration, so I hope that we can talk about some of them. But the two issues that I wanted to read you a little bit about, I'm actually not going to read the part about the title. They take our jobs. A lot of the myths that I look at in the book have to do with immigration and the economy, and I'd certainly be happy to talk about that after I read. But the parts that I was going to focus on, one has to do with the question of rights, and who has rights and who doesn't have rights, and how we decide, we as a society decide who deserves to have rights and who doesn't deserve to have rights, and how that has happened historically and how it works today. And the second part I was going to read has to do with the issue of illegal immigration and what makes some immigration illegal, and how we have been sort of brainwashed into thinking about issues of legal and illegal immigration. So, I'll read you the little section about rights, and then maybe pause for a minute and then move to the section on legal and illegal immigration. Most U.S. citizens, can everybody hear me? Can I stand up? Or? Most U.S. citizens believe that this country is founded on principles of equal rights. Actually, I have to stand up. I can't raise my voice when I'm sitting down. Being a teacher too long. Okay, most U.S. citizens believe that this country is founded on principles of equal rights. They acknowledge that throughout history, many groups were excluded from access to rights: Native Americans, people of African origin, women. But the story of U.S. history is generally told as one of gradual expansion of rights to new groups of people, until finally, with the civil rights legislation of the 1960s, the last remnants of discrimination and exclusion were presumably removed. Is this a narrative many of you are familiar with? To those included in the circle of rights, the exclusion of others has always seemed justified, so much so as to be virtually beyond the bounds of discussion. When the Founding Fathers wrote that, quote, all men are created equal, it was quite obvious to them that women were not created equal to men, and that all men meant white men. When Patrick Henry reportedly declared, give me liberty or give me death, he assumed that liberty was something reserved for whites. A slaveholder himself, Henry admitted that slavery might be morally problematic, but, quote, Henry's understanding of the discrepancy between his words and his deeds never led him to act differently, as sociologist James Lowen explains. I am drawn along by the general inconvenience of living here without them, Henry explained. In every generation, people have found rationales for systems of social and legal inequality. Native Americans had no rights in the new country, so their land could be taken for white settlement. People of African origin had no rights, so it was all right to enslave them. Women had no rights, and their labor was generally unpaid. Contract workers had few rights, many of them from China, as the 19th century went on, or from Mexico, and their labor was underpaid. Immigrants, as well as workers in other countries, have also been deprived of rights, yet their low-paid labor provides the cheap products that our economy depends on. Today, a large and growing portion of our population lives without the full rights of citizenship. Non-citizens work, pay taxes, go to school, and raise families. They live in our cities and towns, they participate in religious, sports, and community events. They serve in disproportionately large numbers in the military. But both the law and popular opinion deems them somehow different from the rest of us, and not eligible for the rights and privileges that 90% of the population enjoys. Many societies have struggled with the question of what makes a person eligible for rights. Does everybody have rights simply by virtue of being human? Or are rights restricted to a select group of people in a society who are defined as citizens? And if rights are dependent on citizenship, how is it decided who can be a citizen? After World War II, there was a widespread repudiation of the kind of legalized discrimination that many believed had led to the horrors of Nazism. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, passed by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948, upheld the idea that there was no justification for governments excluding certain groups of people from rights. The Declaration asserts in Article 2 that, quote, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political, or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And in Article 6, that, quote, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. The Declaration is unambiguous. Rights apply to all people. In the United States, the reality is a bit more complex. U.S. law has always been, and still is, restrictive about who deserves rights. Until the Civil War, federal statutes took for granted and upheld the notion that citizenship and rights should be based on race, and that rights depended on citizenship, which was reserved for white people. The distinction was not between the native-born and immigrants per se, as it is today, but rather between whites, who were citizens, or could be citizens, and non-whites who could not. The 14th Amendment, passed in 1868, for the first time extended citizenship to all persons born in the United States, except Native Americans. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall the state deprive any person, and here in the second half of the amendment it gets suddenly much broader than in the first half. That is, here it's not just any citizen, it's any person, after having already restricted citizenship. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And that within its jurisdiction is kind of ambiguous, because is every person in the state within its jurisdiction, or only those who were judged to be acceptable citizens considered to be within its jurisdiction? And in fact, that within its jurisdiction was used to exclude Native Americans who were not within the jurisdiction. Even if they might be physically present, they didn't count. Citizenship was particularly denied to Asians, and by 1882 they were also prevented from coming to the United States at all, in part to ensure that nobody of Asian descent could gain citizenship by virtue of being born here. That is, once the law established that people born here had the right to citizenship, then start the racially exclusive immigration laws to prevent people from coming here who might then have children who would be racially unacceptable as citizens, but would become citizens by virtue of being born here. Chinese people were not permitted to naturalize in the United States until 1943. Even then, they were subject to an immigration quota of 100 per year. Filipinos and Asian Indians were granted the right to naturalize as citizens in 1946, and the Asiatic barred zone that prevented any Asian immigration was established in 1917, was finally abolished in 1952. It was not until 1965, however, that the 100 per year quotas were lifted for Asian countries. If the 14th Amendment is taken literally, then it is routinely violated in the United States today. Non-citizens are openly denied equal protection, and some of them, those who are undocumented, are denied any protection under the law. Their very existence is termed illegal. In many ways, their situation is comparable to that of African Americans prior to the 1870s, and again after the 1890s, when Reconstruction's attempts to make citizenship real for African Americans were unraveled. Undocumented persons, and even legal immigrants, may be physically present in the United States, but they are not treated equally under the law. Just as in every period of U.S. history, the law today discriminates by excluding large sectors of U.S. society from its protection and from the concept of equal rights. Rather than race, ethnicity, or gender, which have supposedly been discredited as reasons for excluding portions of the population from access to citizenship, today the dividing line is generally place of birth. Unlike in the past, there's no blanket prohibition on citizenship for any group of people. Nevertheless, Many people in the United States are denied the right to become citizens and denied the rights that go along with citizenship. Just as it seemed obvious to those in power in the past that race, ethnicity, and gender were legitimate reasons to exclude portions of the population from rights, many American citizens today believe passionately in the need to divide the population between citizens and non-citizens, and immigrants between those deemed legal and those deemed illegal. Those classed as the latter categories should be denied rights. That those classed in the latter categories should be not denied rights, and that large groups of people should be denied the right to become citizens or to become legal is considered self-evident. Although the exclusion itself is rarely questioned, resentment against immigrants and attempts to further marginalize them are rampant in today's society. The suggestion that non-citizens too are created equal is virtually absent from the public sphere. However, the claims that immigrants take American jobs, are a drain on the American economy, contribute to poverty and inequality, destroy the social fabric, challenge American identity, and contribute to a host of social ills by their very existence are openly discussed and debated at all levels of U.S. society, another aspect of the very deeply inbred discrimination.